All right. So I forked it over to my GitHub. I'm going to clone it down. Git clone HTTP server 1 ls. Where is it? HTTP server 1. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Clear. I'm going to cd in the HTTP server 1. And then I don't want to be working on my master. So let's start creating branches now. How do I create a branch off of master? Check out dash B and then instructor solution. So switch to new branch, instructor solution. Now change from master to instructor solution. Start doing this for all your challenges going forward. Just get in the habit of creating branches, because once you start working on group projects and your personal project, you don't want to be always working on master, because you're going to make changes and then you're going to deviate and work on something else, and then like everything's going to be conflicting with one another. Great. So I'm going to code, open this up into a new window. Got this README and server. Let's go through the README. So the point of this exercise is not to become an expert at building servers. There are many tools out there that already do this. Do what we're going to do way better, which is like Django, a lot of built-in libraries. What is it? Django. What was it? Does Flask have a built-in server? Yeah. But like, the point is, you're not going to be doing this every day, because a lot of technologies already do it, like Ruby, Rails, Node, uses Express, all this stuff. So you're not going to be building HTTP servers from scratch all the time. But we want to reinforce OOP and single responsibility code. So let's look at release 0. HTTP servers speak over the networking protocol, TCP/IP. It turns out HTTP requests and response aren't sent over the web as single blobs of text. Instead, they're transferred over using small packets of reassembled at their final destination. This is the protocol that makes the lower level communication happen. Okay, so we don't need to really do anything. So Python ships with an internal, like an already existing library called socket that we're going to use to actually allow us to make HTTP requests and responses. So let's look into. So we already have some boilerplate code and server PY. So that's with import socket. That's that library that already comes pre-installed with Python. And let's look through kind of what this code is actually doing. All right, we're creating a server variable socket.socket. So socket library has a built-in method called socket. And then we have this socket.af.inet, socket.sockstream. You really don't need to know what this is. If you really want to know, this defines the address family we'll be using. And if you print this out, it'll actually say like address family something something. It's like I don't know what specifically it does. It's really not that important. So that's what this is. Creates a server. Now we want to bind that server. This is really important. We want to bind this server to, or bind the server variable, this, to a specific location. It takes in a parameter, which looks like a tuple, followed by the name, so the local host. So we're going to create a server on our local host on our current local machine at port 9292. This is just kind of an arbitrary port number that we're going to be using. You can use 8080, 1442. It doesn't really matter. Some ports are already used on your laptop for running operations. So if the port is already in use, it'll fail. But localhost, indicates we're going to use this port on our local host, on our local machine. If you were on a public Wi-Fi and you had like a public IP address, you can put a public IP address on here, and I can run my local server on my laptop, and someone from across the room that's connected to the WeWork Wi-Fi can access this server. Just kind of fun. People like mess around with other people like that. So we're printing waiting for connection. And then there's another built-in method called server.listen. Let's go down here. Next, we want to bind the socket to host. That's what we're doing. After that, we tell the socket to start listening for the connection. Then in here, we have a server.accept. So it looks like it's going to take incoming requests. And we've got this client connection variable. We can call this really anything. And we also have a client address that we're not going to be using throughout this application. So if you're not going to be using a variable to indicate to other developers that it's not going to be in use in the application, a little underscore in front of it indicates that to other developers. Next, we bind. After that, the socket will start listening for a connection from a client. Then we print waiting for connection to the terminal. Our program will pause here and wait till it receives a connection. After it receives it, it will print new connection receives, and then it'll close the connection. Let's see what happens. I'm going to open this up. LS clear. So I'm going to run this Python server.py, waiting for a connection. So it runs here, server, finds the localhost, prints waiting connection, runs server.listen, and now it's just stuck here. The file is running, server is listening, it's stuck right here, and it's waiting for a connection. I like using a totally different terminal just so I don't get confused when I'm creating different terminals. Now, how do I actually connect to this server? There's a couple of ways we can do it. We can use Chrome. We can use Postman, which is another application to run post request, get request, see data, whatever. And then we can also use curl. Curl is a built-in library that comes with your terminal that allows you to make get requests, post requests. If you want to read about it, I have a link to the documentation. But you just curl followed by where you want to curl to. So let's just start with curl, open a separate command line window, and run curl http localhost 9292. So this is going to make a get request. After you run the code, the server should accept the connection, print new connection received, and then exit. Let's close that. So here's that. And now I want to bring in this, and this is where I want to make my curl. So I see curl, it did something, curl 56, received failure, connection reset by Peter. I don't know what that means, but over here in my Python or in my server where it's running, it says new connection received, and then it immediately exited out of it. Cool, that's what we were expecting. Server listens for a connection is made, the server does some stuff, and it returns a response. In our case, the stuff we are doing is printing new connection received right there, and then it exits. Let's refactor, do something more interesting. Let's respond to every request with hello world. To do this, we'll use a client connection variable to send and receive data. Client connection is a socket object. I don't know what that is. Let's click on that. Client connection. Oh, I just saw it somewhere at the very top. Create client connection. I don't know. So it's just like a client. It's an object. Read through the documentation to find some methods that can send data, then modify the code in server.py so that each time the client makes an HTTP GET request to our server, they get hello world as a response. So the expected outcome is when you connect to the server and run curl HTTP localhost 9292, we expect hello world to show up in that same terminal. Let's see what that looks like. Looks like we can find some built-in methods send. I'm not quite sure. Send data. So I'm looking here in the documentation. I see we have connection. Accept, that looks exactly kind of like what we're doing here. Server accept, client connection is connection, send data, data. Okay, that looks okay. Let's try to do that. Let's see. All right. I don't know what this, that's not. Client connection received. Let's see this, how this works. Client connection dot send. The hello world. Let's run this again. I'm going to run the server. Waiting for connection. Locals 92. Uh-oh. Don't know what happened. So nothing up here. I didn't receive anything that says file server, client connection dot send, hello world. A bytes-like object is required, not a string. See what that means. I'm sure that's been looked at. I'm sure someone's encountered this before. I don't know. So type error, bytes-like object is required when writing. Open that into a new tab. Open. Cool. Open. That doesn't look like we're doing. Hello world. You can encode your string by using .encode. Example, hello world. Encode. That. Everything else looks like decode strip. Let's use this encode. So I'm just going to do .encode. Let's run this again. Clear the terminal. Run the server. Waiting for connection. Up here in my, as a client, I want to make a request to the localhost 9292. Cool. So hold on. We got curl. We received failure, but we see hello world. We're getting something back from the server. Great, we're sending hello world. All right, that works. Let's do some line breaks. Let's run this again. Waiting for connection. There's my hello world. But, all right, cool. I like that. Let's look at server one. You've successfully completed your first request response cycle. So I made a request going here, a get request. And then here it just automatically sent me a response called hello world. Great. All right, the cycle is what the whole internet is built on. It can be hard to grasp at first since we are running both the server and the client on our own computer, but this same concept is what allows all server in California to respond to an HTTP request sent from a browser in New York City. Great. Keep our server running. Just notice how when I make a request, it just says new connection received, and then it just immediately kills. So if I wanted to make another request, fail to connect to localhost. So the server is no longer running. So we want to keep it running. Let's throw this into a while loop. So we want to wait for a connection, listen, and then, so I think while true, let's put the while loop up here, while true. And then tab everything over. So running modify your server PY file, server responds and starts listening again for a new request. So it's got to close and listen. Let's run this again. Clear it. Waiting for connection. Clear this as well. All right, new connection received, hello world. So I can keep doing it. Yay. That's so much fun. Clear. Then to kill it, just killed it. Clear. Go back to the README. So we can keep our server running so we can make different types of requests to it. HTTP protocol, this is where things get fun. Right now we're just responding with a simple string. Let's modify our code to respond with a standard HTTP response. And in order for our response to show up in Chrome, we have to format it to include at least what when we're dealing with HTTP protocol, the response, what do we need? Kind of just Noah went over it yesterday. So like, let's run the server. And instead of just doing it in the terminal.
Oh, you need headers.
Yes, correct. So if I wanted to run it in the terminal, like localhost 880, what is it, 92. So the page isn't working. But I'm still getting a bunch of, well, 92, if I refresh, nothing's coming back. But the server's doing stuff. So we have to format it. As Pavel said, it needs headers. Let's look at the documentation, the challenge. So in order for our response to show up in Chrome, we have to format it to include at least the following. This is like a lot of stuff. I'm just going to copy this over and put this somewhere. Yes.
Why are you doing an iTerm instead of just another terminal in VS Code?
Just personal preference. I mean, I created another terminal in VS Code. It's just personal preference. It's easier for me to navigate.
Okay.
So I like don't get confused of which terminal instead of like switching back and forth or like doing a split screen terminal. It's mainly for visual preference. So I know I need like an HTTP protocol to include headers. Where are the headers located at? Like of here, what's the headers?
The very first beginning.
Just this?
No, in a string that you send, the very first thing that you send will be the headers. So instead of sending hello world, you would send headers.
Right. But what is included in the headers? Is it just the HTTP? Is it just this part? Quick solution.
Is the first line the request and then all subsequent lines are headers?
So
What type of content?
what do headers look like? HTTP. Headers, MBN. Live. This is. Oh, now we're getting into real weeds here.
Yeah, this is pretty much
Yeah. Essentially, for all intents and purposes, this is what is included in these headers that we're sending.
What makes the headers change? I noticed that
Dependent on the type of request or that the user is requesting.
when John and I were looking at our responses, he was getting different headers than what him and I were getting on them.
Could be the browser.
So that will change the headers?
Yeah, it can change what's included in the headers.
Okay.
But like, you need something in the headers. And right here, it's the HTTP protocol, like the HTTP one, the status code, the content type, length, and then everything else is considered the body. I've got this here, but we want to keep with single responsibility code. So I don't want to be passing in stuff like this, the send. I want to optimize this a little bit. So I'm going to create a method called, what is it, HTTP, should I call it, is it response? Let's go create HTTP response. Doesn't really need anything. And this is where we're going to actually create our HTTP response. So right now we can actually return Return hello world. I just want to see if this is still working. Then we do .encode on the end of it. Then in here, we can get rid of this. You do create HTTP response and invoke it. Let's just see if this is still working. Clear, run server. Come in here, this iTerm. Missing illegal format of missing URL. What's that?
Good, clear. The end of your
Hello. There we go. Okay. So it's still working. Just making sure. Exit the server. But in here, now I actually want to be able to send it via Chrome, like make a request via Chrome. And I need to format this to include headers, and so I'm able to parse an HTML body. So I'm going to create HTML variable. That works. But now I need this stuff up here. Content type. What does it say? Content type, what we're sending back. A blank new line. So this is like the format, and a body response. We need a carriage return between every single line. So HTTP. So we can I'm just going to create a string, just headers to HTTP 1-1.1 status code 200. Okay. And it says carriage return between every single line. Carriage return. Is it content type? What's the content type? Content type, HTTP header. Geeks for geeks. What was it? Text HTML. We'll use that. Carriage return. Content length. The colon. So it looks like we need the length of our body. So I can do, what is it? Actually, we want to grab the length of this HTML. And then a blank new line. Oh, that's not right. Blank new line. What's going on here? Oh, it's normal. RN, 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 and then followed by HTML. That's the body. And we can return header and body. Body header dot encode. It's a lot. So here are our headers, and here's the body. Let's see if this actually works. Run the server. All right, then break. I'm going to run it in here to see what we get back. All right, so we literally just got back our body. And paragraph. Let's make this an H1 tag. H1 tag. Kill it, clear it, run it again. I'm getting lucky with the port staying open longer. Now we're in here. Here's my local host. I refresh it. Hello world. Why is it? Oh, I'm an idiot.
Oh, you did. I was like, that's not
Page 1. Refresh it. Let's kill it. Oh. What's going on? Clear. Let's run this again. Waiting for connection. There we go, the hello world. Let's keep going. So, all right, we got a response back, but we want to receive specific requests. We want to be able to, the client make specific requests and send different types of responses. Let's look back at, once your output curl looks correct, making a request with the browser, ensure that the browser displays hello world. Right, we're good right there. So we're currently ignoring the request. We're just like randomly sending whatever we want back to the client. When our server respond in different ways depending on the kind of request the client sends. Start by checking the socket documentation to find a method that you allow you to receive. Oh, that's pretty easy. Thank you for giving me that. Data from the client. All right, I'm gonna look at the documentation. I'm gonna close all this. Request. Curl. I'm gonna look for receive. So I got receive message, receive. Okay, I see this. Receive data from the socket. The return value is a bytes object representing the data received. The maximum amount of the data to be received at once is specified by the buff size. So you can, okay, that's just beyond my technical capabilities. Let's keep going. So it looks like socket received. Socket received from. Okay. Let's look at the documentation. Socket and received is bytes. You'll have to use decode UTF-8 to convert those bytes to string. All right, I don't know what that means. So down here, that's what we're sending. Let's receive. Client address, client connection.re. I'm actually not quite sure how to use this. Like socket, our receive Python example, low level, socket programming, guide real Python. Background. Look at this. Okay, here's an example. We have connection, we have accept. So dot receive 1024. What is 1024? I'm gonna put that in here. What does 1024 mean?
1 kilobyte.
So 1024. 1,000. So if you kind of, oh, did I just miss it? So right here, the buff size argument of 1024 used above is the maximum amount of data to be received at once. Doesn't mean that receives will return 1,024 bytes. It's just like the maximum allowed bytes. Cool. Let's
Example of assignment too.
Let's assign this to, because this is a request that we're receiving from the client. Request data. I don't know what this looks like. So I want to actually inspect what that import IPython. Do you guys remember using the embed from IPython? From IPython, import embed. So I'm going to put this embed down here, invoke it, kill the connection, and run this again. Waiting for connection, localhost, refresh. So now I'm able to inspect variables, assign variables. So I'm just going to see what request data looks like. Oh, so this is everything that's coming from the client. So we have get HTTP. We have this little B. Don't know. Looks like a string, but there's this B. I don't know. Did I type that? I don't think so. So get HTTP host, a bunch of headers, upgrade, user agent, Mozilla, Macintosh, Intel, great, cool. I want to see what the type of request data looks like. Bytes, cool. So it's not a string. That's where sockets in Python receives data as bytes. That's what we're getting back from the client, bytes. You have to use .decode UTF-8 to convert those bytes to strings. So if I do type decode, was it UTF-8? UTF-8. I don't know what just happened. Uh-oh. Thank you. String. So request data.decode UTF-8 turned it into a string. That's what we need. So I'm going to come over to our, comment that out, .decode UTF-8. How do I exit out of here? I always forget. All right, that works. Run the server. Just want to make sure it still works. Oh, I already commented out. Down here, kill server. Run it again. Uh-oh. No. Try it again.
We had to change our port.
I do this.
There's another one you can do it. Shut down there.
Let's go here. Server. Waiting for connection. 211. Request data. So now it looks like a string. I don't have that B in front of it anymore. I can do type, request, data. Now it's a string. Good. It's kind of what we want. It's not kind of what we want. That is what we want. Delete there. Request data. Looking good. But we want to be able to, what if I did / hello? What's going on? Actually want to see what that looks like. Embed again. Exit. How do I exit again out of here? I don't remember. Clear. Python server, waiting for connection. Refresh. Request data.
If you refresh 0.
Oh, did it zero out? Darn it. Problem. Waiting for connection. / hello. Click there. Back into here. Request data. I want to see if it's changed at all. So in my headers, what is this called again? URI. So I need to extract this because I want to be able to grab data from the client, grab the hello, and be able to do something else with it. So I want to determine my response based off of the URI they go to. So how do I extract this? I don't know. Does anybody remember this? Yes, I do. Clear. So in order to get the URI, I can do request URI equals request data dot split, because that turns it into an array. Or I want to print request URI. Thank you. Run the server. Two. On that. Bunch of get. So I get hello right here. So it looks like that at the first index is where I can get my URI. Has anybody been able to figure out why favicon shows up here after the request?
Yeah, rather wants to explain the information.
Stupid. So I've got the request URI, and now I can do some logic here. I can do like if request URI equals just / do something. I can actually move my client response, like what I'm sending back to the client. Else, is it elif? Else if request URI equals, I need double equals, don't I? Equals time, do something else. Because I think that's what the, yeah, based off of the URI, I want them to respond differently. If the URI is / respond with hello world. If the URI is / times, respond with the current time. The current time is blah, blah, blah. So with regards to single responsibility, passing in the HTTP response into here. But this is just executing this, so maybe I want to respond with a parameter in here called URI. And then, well, connection, create HTTP response. So create HTTP time response. So we don't have to, we'll get to refactoring it later. Create HTTP time response. Then in here, we'll actually, the current time is, insert time. The current time is something. So how do I grab the current time? Time equals, what is that? Oh, thank you. Time equals how to grab current time in Python. Example. So from datetime import datetime. Now. Current. All right, I'm just gonna literally just copy this entire thing. Up here, import datetime. Move this down. Over now current time. Stringify I don't know what that does. Using datetime stringify method, we can create a string representation of the current time. Okay. So in here, we'll do F. Current time. Header, but did I do it again?
We like just letting you go because it makes us feel human.
Hello world. That's my goal. The current time is current time. Gotta make this, everything looks good. Okay. Hopefully it works. So it comes in here, request URI, if it's just a basic / connection, create HTTP response, comes up here, creates hello world, say hello kilo platoon, responds with header and body. Here it creates a new current date time, stringifies it to make it a string representation of the time instead of data type. Then HTML, insert the current time, create the header and body that includes the headers in addition to the body. Let's see if this works. Clear on the server. It's waiting for a connection. Hopefully it works. Hello, Kilo Platoon. Did it break? All right, no, didn't break. Try time. Ooh, fancy pants. Let's kill this. Clear it. Let's look at challenge. Single responsibility principle. At this point, we are not doing a great job at separating our concerns. So in keeping with OO, object-oriented programming, and classes and single responsibility, let's create a separate class and try to, so if you went on a tangent, or if you kind of did your own thing and then you came here and like, oh crap, I gotta copy this code, and then you kind of had to like reverse engineer what's actually happening here, which takes a long time. And, it does. So let's see what this, let's first create touch, that's a response, request, yes, request.py, code request.py, split screens, so we have our request and all our server stuff here. So let's just copy this over. So the request, I'm sure I'm gonna have to, from request, import, I'm just gonna import everything. The little asterisk means import everything from request. And then here, look at some notes, client request. So I'll here request client. So I see like this decode UTF-8 is very similar to this receive.utf decode 8. So it looks like I'm just passing the client connection into here, right? So instead of request data, let's pass in. So request data initialized, I think it's the client request. And then the client request gets passed into this method on it, this parse request that passes in the decoded request. I don't know what the split here does. Let's see what happens. So in here, I'm just gonna copy this over. the request data. Let's initialize a new request instance and pass in the client connection. Scary. I don't know what's going on. All right, request client connection gets passed into initialize, init, then it gets passed into this parse request method that when it looks like it's already been decoded, I hope. And then we want to, let's look at, take some time to figure out what's going on and finish the flesh out parse request method. In the end, you'll want the method to return a dictionary that looks like this, URI. So after it's all done, our server should look essentially like this. Let's see if this works. Request data. So if it parses it in here, I want to, I hate that. Let's print the decoded request data and let's run this. Hopefully it works. It's probably going to break at some point. That's fine. Waiting for connection. Should do the normal. So it broke. Cool. So here is where we're printing. What the hell is that? I don't like that. What did I use down here? Decode, ETF, and then split. I'm gonna split, like, do that. Did I just break something? Probably. So let's clear this. Let's run it again. Uh-oh. Thank you. Clear, please run. Cool. All right, broke. Good. That's what we want, right? Because that's what we're trying to extract. Is that what we want? Maybe I want to pass in. I mean, I want to take the whole thing in there, right? Decoded. Requested text. Could just do that. So, well, we want to return the parse request. But can't we just, if this is URI equals decoded best text, URI, we'll just see what that looks like. Request data. I just want to see if this is still going to work, because it should, because if, for the parse request.
We're not using request URI, so it doesn't work if the statement's not.
Right. This would return client connection as an instance, so we can. Then we do self. We're at like 50 minutes right now. Let's take another 10-minute break, and we'll come back and finish this up. So we'll be back at 10:25. Take a 9-minute break.